By the late 1870s, Reconstruction was coming to an end. In the name of healing the wounds between the North and the South, most white politicians abandoned the cause of protecting African Americans. Poll taxes required citizens to pay a fee to register to vote. These fees kept many poor African Americans as well as poor whites from voting. Denying African Americans the right to vote through legal maneuvering and violence was a first step in taking away their civil rights. Beginning in the 1890s, Southern states enacted literacy tests, poll taxes, elaborate registration systems, and eventually white-only Democratic Party primaries to exclude African American voters. Because African Americans comprised as much as 40% of the population or more in many Southern states, their votes were significant. And that power infuriated white Southern leaders, especially those who had fought hard to maintain slavery. And back then, they were not at all shy about voicing their frustrations and what they intended to do to eradicate them. The laws proved very effective. In Mississippi, fewer than 9,000 of the 147,000 voting-age African Americans were registered after 1890. In Louisiana, where more than 130,000 African American voters have been registered in 1896, the number had plummeted to 1,342 by 1904. Across the South, there was a great push to rewrite state constitutions where the policies of African voter disenfranchisement could be institutionalized. As a result, state conventions popped up all over the South. In these sessions, which were being recorded, these men did not hold their tongues regarding their intentions. There was no covert plan. At a constitutional convention in South Carolina in 1895, the former governor and then U.S. Senator Benjamin R. Tillman, according to Fredericks D. Oganden's 1958 book, The Poll Tax in the South, published by the University of Alabama Press, claimed that African American voters had been largely responsible for the Reconstruction government, and he, along with the men gathered there, was determined to prevent this from occurring again. The president of Louisiana's 1898 State Constitutional Convention, Ernest B. Krushnit, was even more direct. "We have not drafted the exact constitution that we should like to have drafted. Otherwise, we should have inscribed in it, if I knew the popular sentiment of this state, universal white manhood suffrage and the exclusion from the suffrage of every man with a trace of African blood in his veins," he proclaimed. Immediately after World War II, 1939 to 1945, reformers within the party and wartime governor Colgate Whitehead Dowden proposed to repeal the poll tax as an embarrassing and indefensible barrier to democracy in the state. Even though the General Assembly reluctantly proposed a constitutional amendment to abolish the poll tax, the party's leadership rallied behind the poll tax, and the amendment was defeated in the November 1949 ratification referendum. The U.S. Supreme Court declared grandfather clauses unconstitutional in the 1915 and again in 1939. But poll taxes had a greater longevity and remained in effect into the era of the Civil Rights Movement. The 24th Amendment, ratified in 1964, outlawed the use of this tax or any other tax as a precondition in voting federal elections. And in 1966, U.S. Supreme Court decision in Harper v. Virginia Board of Elections extended this ruling, stating that the imposition of a poll tax in state elections violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Those steps in the elimination of the poll tax as a prerequisite of voting all arose from outside the political process in Virginia, a process that had made it virtually impossible for disfranchised people to attain their political objectives, even the right to vote. The Virginia Constitution of 1970 omitted authorization of the General Assembly to make payment of a poll tax a prerequisite for the voting.